For decades, incoming leaders promise that corruption will finally be eradicated. Yet from routine traffic stops to massive infrastructure deals, the daily reality of bribery remains largely untouched for the average citizen. The data confirms what people experience on the ground. Transparency International ranks India 96th out of 180 countries, placing it firmly in the lower half of the global scale for public sector honesty. To understand why this happens, we have to look past the moral arguments and look at the actual accounting of an election. Running a competitive campaign requires massive amounts of liquid cash to pay for rallies, social media teams, logistics, and ground workers. This chart shows the structural flaw at the center of the system. The unofficial costs to win an election can range anywhere between 10 to 50 crore rupees, but the official salary for a politician over a 5-year term is only about 1 to 1.2 crores. State perks like free bungalows, business class flights, and electricity allowances update the visual, but they don't change the underlying math. You cannot pay off a 50 crore cash debt to campaign workers and financiers with non-transferable airline vouchers. A politician might be lifestyle rich, but they are entirely capital poor. If you think this is a permanent cultural condition, consider Singapore in 1959. It was a historically impoverished, overcrowded port city where 75% of families lived in shacks. The system was so saturated with bribery that they literally had an understood rate card for illegal activities. Both situations share the exact same mathematical problem. When the system requires a leader to spend a massive fortune to acquire a low-paying job, the system itself forces that leader to steal cash just to break even. It makes honesty mathematically impossible. When Lee Kuan Yew became prime minister, he operated under a simple philosophy. Running a country is infinitely harder than running a private company. If you pay a leader a clerk's salary, you will only attract individuals willing to earn a CEO's wage through the back door. His first step was to rewrite the rules of the campaign trail. Singapore legally capped the maximum an election candidate could spend at roughly $4 to $5 per voter. The audit department counted every flyer and banner. If a candidate spent a single dollar over that strict limit, they lost their seat entirely. This single rule prevented politicians from accumulating massive initial campaign debts. This equation outlines how Singapore calculated proper compensation for those leaders. Singapore calculated compensation by taking the median income of the top 1,000 private sector earners and applying a 40% public service discount, resulting in a transparent $1.1 million salary. Look at the difference. On the left, Singapore legally covers top-tier talent. On the right, the alternative model leaves politicians with millions in campaign debt and a salary that cannot pay it off. By legally matching the market rate of their top professionals, Singapore completely eliminated the baseline economic necessity for bribery. Fixing the money only works if you enforce the rules. In game theory, deterrence theory dictates that humans are not deterred by how severe a punishment is. They are deterred entirely by the certainty of being caught. This flowchart visualizes a major bottleneck in the current Indian system. Under Section 17A of the Prevention of Corruption Act, investigative bodies like the CBI cannot probe a public servant without prior approval from the government itself. The statistical outcome is predictable. Out of thousands of cases registered, nearly 99% become stuck in pending limbo. The mathematical probability of actually facing jail time approaches zero. This chart maps Singapore's solution, the Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau. It bypasses bureaucracy entirely by reporting directly to the Prime Minister. If the Prime Minister attempts to block an investigation, the Bureau has the legal authority to bypass them and go straight to the President. To close any remaining loopholes, the law operates on a strict presumption of guilt regarding assets. If an official holds wealth disproportionate to their known legal income, they are legally presumed corrupt unless they can prove otherwise. Lee Kuan Yew proved these rules applied to the absolute top of the hierarchy. He deliberately refused to live in Sri Temasek, the lavish historical bungalow designated for the Prime Minister, establishing a precedent that unnecessary luxury was unacceptable. A law is completely meaningless without enforcement. By structuring the system to ensure a 99% conviction rate within months, Singapore replaced the threat of punishment with the absolute certainty of it. This chart tracks the ultimate economic return on those structural changes. As international industries realized their investments were safe from extortion, Singapore's GDP per capita shot from roughly $500 in 1965 to nearly $90,000 today. The disease-ridden slums and overcrowded river settlements transformed into one of the most prosperous, highly developed urban centers on the planet. The math gives us 3 concrete rules for governance. First, integrity has a strict market price. You cannot secure elite national leadership by paying below market rates. Second, a 1% chance of hanging deters almost no one, while a 99% chance of spending a year in jail deters everyone. Effective deterrence relies on the mathematical certainty of capture. Third, if an election ticket costs a massive fortune to win, the winner is mathematically obligated to extract wealth from the system just to break even. An honest government cannot be born from a financially crippling election. For those who argue this math only works on small island states, Deng Xiaoping studied these exact mechanisms directly from Lee Kuan Yew. He took this blueprint back to China and applied it at an unprecedented scale, building an economic superpower. Eliminating corruption isn't out hoping for politicians with better morals. It requires fixing the inputs, legally capping the cost of power, paying for top talent, and structuring the absolute certainty of consequence. You have to fix the math to save the nation.